how old would you think I am, just based on my numbers, based on the work that we've done?
Oh, I would say like at the most, I'd say you're in your early 40s, like 42, maybe 38.
And I will say this, I have bad days where I have fatigue and whatever, you know what I mean? I got on the tonal and got on the bench press and knocking out pull-ups and push-ups. It was fun. I mean, really fun to just be strong in there and kind of competitive with two guys that are 15 and 20 years younger than me.
There's now a way that we can actually measure our true cellular age. So we call that biological age versus chronological age. If I'm 50, then how old am I really inside my body? There's now ways to test that.
How old are you really? The reason why we created the Power of Four is to help people just kind of take that next step in life, get them a little bit stronger, a little fitter, lose some weight, feel better about themselves, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally, spiritually, whatever it takes for them to kind of find that place, you know what I mean? And so when it came to searching for the folks, and you've been in my life and Shauna's life for quite a while now. I'm trying to think of over 12 years or something. I'm thinking.
It is.
I mean, gosh,
amazing.
How come you look better and I just look weird?
No, you look the same.
Yeah, well, yeah, the hair though. Look, I don't know what's going on. I look like Max Headroom today. Anyway, you're gonna have to Google hair.
You have a lot of hair. That's good.
It's like, what's blowing up? I just need a haircut. But anyway, I digress as per usual. But the whole idea here is the reason why we created this higher level of participation in Power Nation is to give people these live workouts and these mastermind classes. And sadly, not everybody takes advantage of it. Maybe it's cost or time or whatever it is. But honestly, when it comes to anything else, when you went to school, I thought about this earlier. When you go to school, right, you've got different teachers and different classes, and you're in school all day, and then you do it the next day and the next day and the next day, and then you hopefully graduate from first grade, and then you go to second, and then third. And this process goes on forever and ever and ever, and then hopefully you become a somewhat functioning adult. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of things that fall through the cracks throughout our education, like health and diet and these kinds of things, unless you kind of focus on them later in life, or you run into the right kind of people, or you have parents who, shared that and passed that down. And why I think these masterminds and having you on our team kind of talking about a category that is rare. I mean, you don't really see, we're LA people, we're Hollywood people, right? And you have a lot of fancy clients, and I'm probably your least fancy one as a C- celebrity. But is really to kind of give people the information that they would normally never, ever get in their life. And, and then it comes down to people trusting me, right? Like, that Tony Horton guy is doing pretty well for 63 years old. He must be doing something right, or many things right. I'd like to kind of, sign on. I'm all in. I want to find out what's going on with me, because I'm eating right and I'm exercising, but still, why am I exhausted? Why am I bloated? Why am I, moody or depressed? Why can't I lose these last 15 pounds? And that's the reason why you're here. Is because you can fill in those cracks and answer those questions and help people in areas where they've never been helped before. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so part two of that is, and then I'm going to introduce you and let you do your thing. But part two of that is, if you're here and you've signed up, those of you that are watching, Heather and I, it's not worth it unless you do something. You know what I mean? Taking action is everything. Like the first time you decided to get up in the morning and throw on your workout clothes and go to a yoga class, or go to a rock climbing gym, or take spinning class, or, do P90X, or whatever it is. There was action that was taken. And this process goes on and on and on for the course of our lives, if we really want to continue to not only sustain and maintain a certain level of health, but actually to improve it as we get older, which is, knock on wood for me, is actually happening. And because I just, I want to retire eventually, and I want to do more than fish. You know what I mean? I want to ski, and I want to do all kinds of, I want to push the envelope. I want to travel the world. I want to go to at least 50 countries that I haven't been to yet. That's going to take some energy and stuff. So with all that said, I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm sure these folks are thrilled that you're here. And, we've had you on other past masterminds before during the beta process, but now we're introducing you to some new people. A lot of folks who've never met. I'm sure there's people in here. I can't see you. It makes me so sad. But there are a lot of people in here that have loved you and have taken advantage of you and have actually contacted you, and you've been able to help them. And now we're going to be able to do that for some other folks here for the first time. So that's really super exciting. So everybody, I just want you to know my background with Heather, Sean, and I. We were doing pretty well. You know what I mean? We went in for a checkup, and we heard of you through a friend, and we fell in love with you out of the box because you were doing things or recommending things for us that we had never even knew existed. And then we tried them, and we gave you all our blood, and you analyzed that blood, and we learned a lot of things that other doctors and practitioners just don't do. You just go deep. You know what I mean? And it's that level of depth that you go to where you really begin to discover some things, about your hormones and about different, the kind of macros or micros that are nutrients and different things that we just weren't getting. You know what I mean? And especially after I was sick in 2017, and you came to the rescue. I remember today I saw the announcement for your appearance, and I wrote, forget all the horses and all the king's horses and all the king's men. It was Heather Fitzgerald that helped put me back together again. And it's true. And so that's why we're excited to have you. So I like your title for your conversation today. How old are you really? Now, I want to start by asking you a question, and you got to be honest about this. You don't have to blow any smoke or anything from me. Okay.
Okay.
But after all the work that you've done for me and looking at my numbers, and we'll get into the numbers and what they all mean, Heather will get into that. How old, like if you look at it and you didn't know me and you didn't know I was 63, blah, blah, blah. How old would you think I am just based on my numbers, based on the work that we've done together?
Oh, I would say like at the most, I'd say you're in your early 40s, like 42, maybe 38.
Between 38 and 42.
Yeah.
38 if I owed you money, and 42 if you just wanted to be completely honest. That isn't bad. That's 20.
Yeah.
That's 23 to 27 years younger than I am. And I will say this, I have bad days where I have fatigue and whatever, I have eczema on my face. There's other things I should address eventually. But in general, like I had to work out this morning, chest and back, I got on the tonal and got on the bench press and knocking out pull-ups and push-ups. And it was fun. It was actually, it was really fun to just be strong in there and kind of competitive with two guys that are, that are 15 and 20 years younger than me. So, and even maybe younger than that. So it's just, it goes to show you that, and another reason why you're here is you can exercise all you want, man. And you can eat really clean. And you can even have a semi-decent mindfulness practice too, but there are other things that need to be addressed that if you really want to get to that next level, Heather's that person that can be able to help you get there. So again, without further ado, Heather Fitzgerald, everybody. I know you're all clapping,
Thank you.
screaming, and shouting in your homes. Take it away.
Thank you so much for having me again. I always love to come and speak on this platform because everyone is so wonderful that follows you. And of course, I love you and Shauna and care about your health as well. Based on this topic today, it sounds a little bit maybe sort of, vanity based, I guess, maybe, but this is why we're having this. It's much deeper than that. And I'm super excited to actually bring this information because it's kind of new to me. I have been studying it for the past probably 4 months, 4 to 6 months, let's say, because this is a brand new technology, brand new testing method. And, when you said, well, how old do I look? Right.
Feel, yeah, well,
and I know you're
look, I look 58. Let's face facts, you know what I'm saying? But as far as everything else, internally, you know what I mean? From the skin in.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. But, people do judge you. It's sometimes hard to tell how old people are these days. We're not our parents' 50 is what I tell my friends and my clients is, when we grew up, it seemed like 50 and 60 was so old, but, we're living different lives than our parents. And then, obviously more even so than our grandparents, because we know more and there's more research, there's more information available. And so today we're going to talk about how you can actually determine what your true age is. Okay. So what I mean by that is I'm actually 50 years old. And I did this test. Okay.
That still blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind.
Well,
I mean, I see you in person. I mean, and like, and when I, sometimes, when you're looking through, like, I get this brand new desktop that's like 4K. So, oh geez.
Yeah, I know.
Right. But when I see you in person, you look exactly like you do on my screen.
You're very kind. Thank you.
I mean, so, you look 31.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, I want my insides to be 31 too. I mean, that's really the key, right? Because there's a lot of people, I mean, that spend a lot of time and money and effort on how they look. And certainly, our vanity and how we, appear to others, how we present to ourselves in the world is important to our self-esteem. It's important to, a lot of things. I mean, it can determine, whether or not we get a job. I mean, whether that's fortunate or unfortunate. I mean, certainly taking care of oneself is important, and it does reflect on how we appear externally. But, when we look at aging and we talk always about quality of life and wanting to make sure that, like, when you retire and go traveling, you want to be not in you don't want joint pain. You don't want, to feel like you're bloated because you try some new food. I mean, whatever it is. And so there's now a way that we can actually measure our true cellular age. So we call that biological age versus chronological age. Okay. So if I'm 50, then how old am I really inside my body? And there's now ways to test that. So I'm going to actually share. I'm going to just do a share screen because I have a little PowerPoint because it helps me kind of stay on point and explains things. So bear with me right now while I pull it up. Okay. So how old are you really? The science behind aging. So first, let's talk about what is aging, right? So if this will go down. Okay. So aging, it's really the accumulation of changes, right, in the human being over time. But it encompasses the physical, psychological, social changes. But for most of us, it shows up in things like our hair begins to show that it has gray over time, or our skin begins to wrinkle and thin. That's kind of a big thing. Joints get a little more achy or a little more crotchety, as I say. Memory begins to decline. We're maybe not as sharp as we once were. Certainly body composition changes where we, more fat, less lean muscle. So we're not as lean as we were when we were 20, right? Or even 30 for that matter.
I hear that's true. Yes.
Yes. And that is part of aging. I mean, one of the definitions of aging that I've heard through the years from a science, is that the definition of aging is also the loss of lean body mass, because that's why it's so important that we, if you're going to choose some kind of exercise, doing some kind of weight bearing exercise, whether it's actually with weights or using, doing yoga, or that's the best way to, keep that muscle, as well as to keep your bones healthy and your bones dense. Vitality and our resilience decline. So we just don't have as much stamina, and maybe also as much tolerance for emotional, physical thing. I mean, it could be just that kids screaming, like you just don't have as much tolerance. Or it could be that you just don't have as much of that. I guess I call it mojo, but it's really that people tell me all the time, I just lost my spark, my that thing where I feel like myself and I feel like really energized. And so that's really what we're sort of fighting, right?
I call that the loss of the E&E, energy and enthusiasm for life.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's really good. I might steal that from you.
You can borrow that one. Yes.
Okay. So this is important to know. So aging is the number one risk factor for most chronic diseases. So we're going to get into that for a second, but essentially, as we age, as the age goes up, so does our risk for chronic disease. I mean, that's one of the reasons in my practice why I do what I do, because which includes hormone replacement therapy, because it's actually slowing the aging process down, and that's what we're trying to do. Protecting the immune system, giving us that sort of extra energy and enthusiasm. Okay. However, it's been shown that if we can delay the aging rate by 7 years, okay, just by 7 years, that would cut the incidence of disease in half. Now, that's pretty intense. Like, if you really think about that, because if you look to the right of this PowerPoint, you'll see 80% of adults 65 and over have at least one chronic disease. And you can see the breakdowns. So, hypertension or high blood pressure is 58%. That's the most common. High cholesterol, 47%, arthritis, coronary heart disease, and diabetes, all in, incrementally goes down. But that's quite big percentage when you look at that. And so, the idea would be never to have any of these. Now, some of these things, like I know people that are very fit and they live a very healthy life. No one has a perfect life, a perfect balance. I think we definitely, I think are always working at finding that balance. But you can still have high blood pressure. It can be a genetic thing, or it could be that there's a type of high blood pressure where people have it just kind of spikes up out of nowhere, and it's not. They call it volatile high blood pressure. I mean, because they really don't know why. And I've had patients like this where they're very much in shape, and they hit a certain age and it just starts to become an issue. And those types of things we can't quite change yet. I think in the future we'll be able to by modifying genetics. But
it's interesting though that I remember going to my doctor's office and he goes, "Oh, your blood pressure is a little high." I said, "That's strange." He says, "It's you're as fit as you are. Your heart rate's low." He goes, "It's probably white coat disorder." I said, "White coat disorder?" He said, "You're in a doctor's office. You're being tested. You're a little nervous and a little stressed out." And I think a lot of times it goes out just from people being, nervous about
absolutely
something, stressed out too.
Yeah, white coat syndrome. Yeah. Definitely. White coat disease. Did you call it disease? Yeah.
I think it's syndrome you're right.
Syndrome it's so common. And then we usually just say, okay, well, just relax and breathe. And then we come back around at the end of the session and then do it. And it usually again. Comes right down. So if it's going to be down, but then, one of the biggest contributors, just using that example of hypertension or high blood pressure, is that, every time you lose weight, like you lose 5 pounds, it can be the difference between someone being on medication or not. So that's incentive for a lot of people, because most of the people that I meet, and I'm sure most of your, your followers they don't want to take medicine if they don't have to. I mean, who does? I mean, it's, but high blood pressure is one that you don't want to mess around with because it literally just makes your heart overwork. So when it doesn't need to. So if you do have, high blood pressure, you got to get it under control, and you have to do it with medicine before you lose weight. Now, as you lose weight and get healthier, if that's, one of the contributing causes of your high blood pressure, then you can slowly, wean off that medication or wean down the dose. And I've seen plenty of people do that. Using that example, I mean, what we want to try to do is, most people, when they call me up, they have complaints. I mean, besides their energy and enthusiasm, they maybe feel like their mood is a little down or their joints are hurting. And obviously, pain is a whole nother topic, but that is a severely, debilitating and also draining on the body emotionally and physically when you have pain and you're dealing with pain, constantly. And so getting to the root cause of a lot of these things is very important. The other thing I want to bring up, since we're talking about these disease states, I think it's really important just to, when you talk about coronary heart disease, cholesterol is one thing, right? So we've been a bit brainwashed into thinking high cholesterol is, the devil and it's the worst thing you can have. And it is true that having high cholesterol does increase your risks of cardiac events, like having a heart attack or stroke, along with other lifestyle lifestyle choices and behaviors. But coronary heart disease is, in this country, I believe it's something like 26 people a day die of a heart attack. And that is completely unnecessary. I mean, the one thing about this country, we may not like our medical system for its preventive care because it doesn't really exist in the medical model. But what we are really good at is crisis medicine, right? So like if you get into a car accident and you need a surgery, like we've got the guy to fix you up and to, put you back together essentially. Or the physicians and surgeons to do that. And that is a blessing. So I in no way mean to diss on conventional medicine. I just think that it's not the end all be all. I'm glad it's there. It's just like medications, drugs. I mean, thank goodness that there are medications, but if we, most of them are treating symptoms, they're not getting to the source, right? So that's really where I think the power of four come back to too, which is the really, from the ground up, right? Getting things on track in the right way and getting to the root of it, because otherwise you're just band-aiding all the way around. And unfortunately, a lot of the medications that are prescribed the most for these conditions, like hypertension, high cholesterol, arthritis, they do deplete the body of essential nutrients. So, so whatever we can do to slow down this, rate of aging is what we want to focus on. So let's talk about the three categories of aging. Okay. So there are hormonal aging, and that's basically men and women go through hormonal changes as they age. Men are a little bit different in that it's less let me just say this. It's more variable. There's more variables with men than there are with women. Women tend to go through menopause by age 55 or 60 at the latest, but that's kind of late. I would say the average is 50 to 55. And that's basically when our ovaries stop producing as much estrogen as we used to. Now, men go through also what's called male menopause, or andropause is what we call it in a medical terms. And what we do know is, in a general way, you hear these statistics, but men generally, when they reach the age of 50, they have about half the amount of testosterone they had when they were 20. And the hormonal aging is important because when you look at
me.
Yes, except for you. Yes. No, I mean, I've seen men in their 70s that have levels of 700-800 testosterone. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, it really does. There's a lot of things, obviously, that play into that. Genetics, which is what's passed on to you from your parents, right? Lifestyle, and that also includes the environment. So there's a lot of things. I mean, and you obviously are a living example. I mean, you walk the walk. I mean, a lot of people, I think you do a pretty good job. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't until like I've always exercised, but when I got back into weightlifting a couple of years ago during the pandemic, I mean, that I was somebody who worked out every day, and then you get busy with work, and then it goes the other way, right? You go to nothing, and then you have to find your way back and get to some, middle ground. But so all of these things, I mean, are going to, be affected by the individual, like in how they're living their life. So hormonal these are things that are natural physiological changes that will happen with time. Men just have a little bit more variability in terms of when that will happen for them. But on average, it's around 50 to 60, I would say. There are exceptions to that. Women, like I said, 50 to 55 for menopause. And, earlier in the slide, we talked about the things that we notice. I mean, I can tell you just firsthand that, what I see and what we do know is that the loss of estrogen in women causes our skin to become thinner. It also causes us to have more fine lines and wrinkles because of estrogen. When that stops producing, it makes our skin more dry. So as well as our eyes, all of our mucous membranes get a little bit more parched. And that's because that's from the effects of estrogen. In fact, estrogen has over 400 functions in a female's body. And so it's very important. And most of those things we take for granted until we start to experience the symptoms, which can range from anything from memory issues, foggy head, fatigue, depression, hot flashes, night sweats. I mean, you name it. Those are all things that come up. And so hormonal changes the idea is not to, put you back to an 18-year-old level. It's really just to replete your level so that your quality of life improves, right? And so that your symptoms subside. But what you're doing is literally helping to protect your heart, right? In a woman's case, like especially women and men, both heart disease risk factors for cardiovascular disease go way down. Like when a man has low T, clinically low T, like a level of say 250 or less in the blood, that puts him at a 50% greater risk for a heart attack. So, and it also can affect his bone density, even though no one talks about that. For females, same thing. Estrogen actually keeps our heart, our arteries like pliable instead of hardening. Okay. So these are the things that age us more quickly. So that's why hormonal, that category is so important, because it provides so many protective aspects to our body. I mean, from immune system to adrenals to just general well-being, like your day-to-day, how you feel, if your mood is good, or if you feel really edgy or, short fuse, that's all can be related back to hormones.
And Heather, when these things aren't addressed, people just think it's bad luck, or they think it is genetic when it's not genetic, it's actually hormonal. Yeah. And they don't really know that they can even address these things and make some sort of dietary and micro changes. I mean, beyond depression and fatigue and pain, people who don't address can die. I mean, we have a friend of ours' daughter passed away because you probably would know better than I, but she was completely missing something in her hormonal
probably
profile.
Cortisol or something.
Yeah,
probably.
just done, and they didn't discover this until it was too late.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, because obviously it depends on, who the person is. I mean, there's a lot, we're going to get into that. There's a lot of factors that affect our aging. And one of those would be socioeconomic status, education level. I think the internet has bridged the gap of that. I think in terms of education, I think somewhat, I mean, we have more available to us now than ever before in terms of being able to, we grew up where we had to look up in books things, I mean, like,
we had to go upstairs in the hallway to the Encyclopedia Britannica.
That's right. And, now it's at your fingertips, or at your voice command. So, I think that, when you get a look at all of this, how it all plays together, and environmental is, I believe that's really the sea you swim in. So that's number one, your food intake, right? Because food is medicine. There's no question about it. That, all the sound bites, like you are what you eat. It really does come back to that. I mean, ultimately, because, if you look at this country and how much overweight and obesity that we have this mass amount of population that they're literally malnourished, obese people. And so these are the people that were the people that would be more likely to succumb to COVID, right? Yep. Like, because that was actually shown in a lot of the research, and the numbers show that, the percentage of people that had COVID that were hospitalized for the first time, the Delta variant, they definitely had underlying conditions, and most of them were overweight, at least 20, or obese, which is at least 20% over your recommended weight, and also diabetes and cardiovascular disease, because those all go together. Okay. They kind of are interchangeable. And environmental is also your lifestyle choices, right? So that can be anything from exercise to the amount of stress, the emotional connections you have in your life. If you're in a toxic, abusive relationship, that also will wreak havoc on your body, believe it or not. And
even overtraining. I mean, a lot of people are exercising too hard. I mean, it's funny because I'm going to be on the doctor's soon.
Oh, are you? Oh, good.
That's the top. Yeah, that's kind of fun. And that's the topic of discussion. I mean, as somebody who trains pretty hard, but it's really all about, pacing yourself and taking days off and finding mindfulness practices that can help the healing thing other than, your lousy 6.5 hours of sleep every night, and so that's another one. Like people are doing all the right things. They're eating, like they're really strict with their diet and they're training, twice a day and they're fried, you know what I mean?
Fried.
Their adrenal glands are fried. That hormone, that cortisol hormone is ravaging their bodies and their brain. And they're like, well, I'm doing everything right. And a lot of people don't know how to relax. They don't know how to chill. They don't know how to take a nap. They don't know how to get in a bathtub. You know what I mean? They haven't had a massage their entire life. These simple things matter.
It's true. And that's all part of, balancing self-care, because, we tend to be a little bit over extreme, in this, we tend to be all or nothing. A lot of the ways that we approach these things, and overtraining is absolutely a real thing. I mean, I have a client now that I've seen for probably 4 or 5 years, and she's always, we've worked on her relationship to her food. She's got some fears around gaining weight. She's a runner, and she's running too much. I mean, she's running 60.
She's running from something, I think, probably.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, again, that's not off the table. These are all parts of our health. Our mental health is a huge component, and people don't realize that, because our mental health and the way that we feel about ourselves has a lot to do with our belief systems, right? So if you're in a relationship or working for somebody who's abusive to you, you don't even know how much that affects your self-esteem until you get out of it. You really don't, because you're adapted to it. And that does play a role, because that's stress to your body. So, as they say, stress can be positive, stress can be negative. But the idea is that, we do look at the areas and not run away from them, literally or figuratively, because that is what people do. I mean, we tend to find ways. That's how a lot of people get to be overweight, is that food is an easy way to cope, right? So it's, it's legal. So it doesn't leave us. It's whatever we want it to be. It's instant gratification, and we can get it pretty much any time of the day or night. So, that's a great example of somebody overgiving in one area and neglecting others. Okay. Other areas.
Well, hello, it's Tony Horton. How are you? I'm glad that you've really enjoyed this interview. I can tell because you're watching it, because I can see you. Anyway, since you're here, I know you're really going to fall madly in love with this next one. I mean, I'm talking about knowledge consumed by you. All you got to do is go right over there.